So with that, man, did you we're gonna rewind a little bit. Did you see yourself in this space during undergrad, in this advocacy space, or what did you see if we was to rewind the clock a little bit?
Oh man, hell no. I did not see myself in policy whatsoever. So I went to the University of California, Davis for my undergraduate degrees. Um, Definitely wanted to work with and alongside students, particularly first generation, low income, students of color, students who look like me, students who come from similar backgrounds as myself, and just trying to provide holistic advising. Like that was what I wanted to do in undergrad. Because I recognized that, like, you go to, at least for me, I went to college, but unfortunately classes weren't the hardest part of college. They were hard, but it was everything else, just adjusting holistically to the campus, to the space, to the people, to the rigor. Like, sometimes my students, it wasn't that they didn't understand calculus. It was that they didn't know where they're going to have their next meal, and that impacts you. You know what I'm saying? So I wanted to be able to work alongside students to really just remind them of their brilliance and like them be able to cater their resources to what they wanted. Then I became a fellow where I was like a college advisor after I graduated. And I saw the brilliance of students, man. They were persisting against just these financial aid policies and admissions that just didn't make any sense. I was like, yo, I'm telling you everything I wish I would have known. And yet there's still something, it was almost like an invisible hand was at play. These students were doing everything they were being told, students who look like me, and yet they still weren't getting it done. And that wasn't because of them, but I started realizing then I didn't have the words for it, but it was systemic. Right? Went to grad school, still wanted to work with students. At this point, I wanted to work with men of color in particular, because I realized, oftentimes in my managerial economics courses, I was one of the few men of color in the classes of 150. You know what I'm saying? So it was like this invisibility of folks like myself trying to talk about toxic masculinity, try to talk about like family, try to talk about all these different things that intersect as a student when you identify as a man. And then unemployment hit, to be honest with you. It was tough. It was tough to find a job after I graduated from grad school. And I expanded my search. I expanded into policy. I took one policy class in my grad program, and I talked smack the entire time. I was like, this makes no sense. Where's the community voice? Like, where the community members come in and have these conversations? It just seemed really disconnected. It seemed systemically, it was designed to be disconnected from the people who suffered the most, unfortunately. That's what I kept like pushing. So my professor, actually, she was like, yo, you should look into policy because you have great questions and you have work on the ground. And there's a lot of people who in policy who don't have work on the ground. They just go from school to theory and directly into making policy decisions at the abstract and not at the personal. So I was like, okay, didn't pay any attention to it. Fast forward, unemployment. I didn't even apply to this position. It was an informational interview that literally turned into a real interview.
Wow.
It was a calculated risk, man. I had no policy background at all, but because of the people working at trust, like Dr. Tiffany Jones, Dr. Wilder Pilat, Dr. Kayla C. Elliott, Dr. Marshall, Victoria, Satchel Lawrence, like I was going to join a team that was all Black and brown, highly credentialed, all about racial justice and equity. They're down to, disrupt the status quo. I was like, yo, I don't know nothing about policy, but this is dope. So I kind of made that transition, and now I'm in that space, which is wild, but not. To a long way to answer your question is no, not in 100 years did I imagine being in policy at all.